Welcome everyone to the May 14th workshop meeting. Thank you for joining us. I have no president's report this evening, so we will move on to the superintendent's report. Ms. Weldon?
Okay. Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you. I have a few things to discuss tonight. We have our special education resources and transition fair tomorrow from 3 to 6 p.m. This is a new initiative that we have, our first time ever. We think it's going to be great service for our students and families. And we also have the Wanamassa Night of Fine and Performing Arts coming up on May 16th. And an art show at 4:30 and the art show at 6:30. I'm sorry, the art show's at 4:30, the concert is at 6:30. We have the OTHS Spring Band Concert coming up on May 16th at 7 p.m. And our junior prom is this Saturday night on May 18th. So all good things coming up. Later on in the agenda, we have a resolution for a proclamation for Special Education Week. And I think this is a great thing that we are declaring and proclaiming this as Special Education Week. Ocean Township High School has a number of, you want to read that?
It's under my,
Okay. I'm not going to read the proclamation. Just talking about a few other things. In addition to the transition fair, we have our elementary students are exploring newly received books courtesy of our SEPTA organization. We did have our SEPTA Awards event last week, which was wonderful. And we have a number of different things going on throughout the district. And as Mrs. Gilman said, she will read the proclamation later on in the agenda. And then finally, under my report, I have the school self-assessment for determining grades under the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act. The official release of the grades for the 2022-2023 school year have been released by the Department of Ed. We discussed all of these this summer. In my report this summer, I presented to the board and to the public how we assessed ourselves, each school, and what we were submitting to the DOE. And once the DOE then releases it, and it's called the official release, I'm required to also notify you that it has been officially released. And then we will put it up on our website this week, and it will be there for the remainder for a year until we get the ones next year. Okay, so that concludes my report at this time.
Thank you. School Business Administrators Report, Mr. Hastings.
I have no report, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, we're going to move into public comment regarding agenda items. All motions are posted on the district website. At this point in the meeting, we will now conduct the first of two public comment sessions. The first session will be open for public comments on agenda items only. The second session will be at the end of the meeting and can be on any topic. Would anyone from the public like to comment on any agenda item at this time? Anyone in the room? Ms. Hayes?
Alex Hayes, Oakhurst. So sticking to agenda stuff only, the $3 million roof project. I'm curious with the two-track contractors, the one whose bid had to be thrown out because it sounds like they put the information on the wrong line, which is fascinating to me. And you have to now have the second highest bidder. It doesn't say anywhere in the documents what the difference is. So it would be interesting to know what the difference is between those two bids. And also when you put contractor names like VMG, they lost out, and now MTB won the bid for a $3 million roofing project. I don't think there's much transparency nor identification in who these contractors are. It's hard to look up who contractors are when they have names that are probably someone's initials. Secondly, let's see. We still don't put names of like when people are resigning, retirements. We can't even put the names of summer school teachers on the agenda, and most towns do that. I don't know why this Board of Ed can't seem to ever put the names on agendas. We just put like resignation, retirements. TOIS facilities was not listed as a project expenditure. So I was wondering if they will not be offering Project Extend at TOIS. I think it went 5th and 6th grade or something, or if, maybe they're just doing it another week. And then finally, as the daughter of a physical therapist, I'm noticing that you're trying to get a new PT OT vendor. And I looked up the PT place that you are trying to now contract with, and they do not have a PT on their staff. They have a PTA, they have OTs and speech and language. They do not have a physical therapist. And in the state of New Jersey, a physical therapist is the one who can do evaluations, not a PTA. And their contract that is drummed up here does not put in place if it will be a PTA doing some of the things that they say they're going to be doing in evaluations, or if it will be a PT. I actually showed that to my mother, and she was like, this is a little bit absurd. Perhaps they have other PTs on staff, but it's certainly not on their website. That's it for now.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else in the room?
Can I just clarify, we're awarding to the second lowest, not the second highest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to know the difference.
Anyone else in the room have any public comment? No? Ms. Conway, anyone in the queue?
Good evening, Madam President. There are no commenters in the queue at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Conway. All right, at this time, we will go on to the action items. Mr. Dalton,
Sure, I move to approve minutes 7.1, 7.2.
Second.
Mr. Hastings?
Yes, thank you. This is for the approval of 7172. Mr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. Dam,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
I abstain.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Mrs. Parlamas.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you, Mr. Dalton. Personnel, Ms. McGovern.
Yes, I move to approve items 8.1 to 8.13, which are all in public comment on content on the website. May I have a second?
Second.
This is to approve 8.1 through 8.13. Mr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. Dam,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman,
Yes to all, but for my dear family members, Cipriano Apicelli and Jenna Siriani, I recuse myself.
thank you. Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes, except for 8.4 and 8.13, I'll recuse myself for due to my wife's involvement in those two parts.
thank you. Mrs. Parlamas.
Yes,
Motion carries.
right. Thank you very much. Financial Management and Resource Services, Mr. Weinstein.
Yes, like to move to approve 9.1 to 9.6. And then we'll talk 9.7 to 9.11. We'll have a discussion.
Second.
Would anybody like to talk anything about 9.1 to 9.6 before we get into results?
Yes.
Ms. Talarico.
Thank you. The doctrine of necessity of resolution, why is that not on the website for the agenda?
It's essentially a walk-on item. This is a regularly scheduled meeting, and so items can be added to the agenda. It's a matter that was under review, research and deliberation by my office up until yesterday afternoon. So that's why. After, if presuming it passes, it will be posted on the website for 30 days, as well as other locations that the board typically posts notice in accordance with your policy and the law. And a copy of it, again, if it's passed, will also be sent to the School Ethics Commission in accordance with board policy and law.
So the public will not see this before the vote.
We're at a public meeting now, so the public will hear it when I read it.
Oh, you're gonna read it?
Yes, I'm
Oh,
gonna read it.
okay, I'm sorry.
But even if I didn't read it, the public is not entitled to, you don't have to read every resolution word for word. So you are entitled to walk on items at a regular meeting.
Okay, and I do
But
have,
again, the intent was not be transparent, just to preempt any accusations or comments about that. As I indicated, the matter is under review by legal counsel up until yesterday afternoon.
okay, and I do have a second.
Yes.
So, to add to this and to add to the policy. I don't know if this is the right time, but I would like to make a motion to include in the indemnification policy that any board member that uses taxpayer district money to defend themselves against ethics charges and allegations, that if the allegations are found true, that they pay the district back. Do I have a second? Save the taxpayers some money.
Okay, Madam President, the motion was properly moved. Is there a second? Seeing and hearing no second, the motion dies. Next.
Okay. Any other, yes.
I'm sorry,
Mr.
does
Glover.
this piece of paper that you're gonna read at some point take place of 9.6 on our agenda?
Yes, so I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, council, we're gonna vote or amend, provided Mr. Weinstein and Mrs. McGovern approve the change, 9.1 through 9.5. We'll then read and approve 9.6, which will be the doctrine.
And what we call this 9.6A, and then 9.6 can stay as written. Because you have to do the doctrine before you vote on the indemnification.
Okay,
And so we technically shouldn't even discuss the indemnification until after you vote on the invocation of the doctrine, because technically there's a conflict. To the extent there are 5 board members with a conflict, you can't discuss the issue until after you kind of cure the conflict through this resolution.
okay. So we're voting on 9.1 through 9.5 right now, is that correct, Mr. Hastings?
If Mr. Weinstein and you approve the adjustment to your
So instead of
Yeah.
9.6,
move and second.
Yes,
So 9.1,
Very good.
9.5. Yep.
second.
So this is 9.1 through 9.5. Mr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. Dam,
yes.
Mrs. Gilman,
I recuse myself from the use of facilities for ocean baseball and for wrestling and for Camp David. And yes to human services and our lacrosse.
and all other items.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. McGovern,
Yes,
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Mrs. Parliamentary.
Yes,
Motion's carried.
okay. So now we need to, is there any discussion?
we need to read it.
Should we
Yeah.
do the indemnification first?
No, Madam President, you, the board,
Yeah.
needs to review and vote on the resolution to invoke the doctrine of necessity.
Okay, so we do that.
I'll
next.
explain that, and then
Okay,
you can vote on the next one, which is the indemnification.
okay,
So it's probably easier to read it first, and then I'll try to explain it to the best of my ability in simplest terms. And I would also state for the record that this is not only in accordance with applicable law under Robert's Rules of Order and state statute, but also your board bylaw 0163, which deals with quorum and specifically references when the board may invoke the doctrine of necessity, namely when a majority of members on the board have a conflict, which would prohibit the board from taking action. In this instance, there are 5 board members that have a conflict by being named in an ethics complaint. May 14th, 2024, Doctrine of Necessity Resolution, whereas the School Ethics Act, NJSA 18A:12-21 et sec, was enacted by the New Jersey State Legislature to ensure and preserve public confidence in school board members and school administrators, and to provide specific ethical standards to guide their conduct. And whereas the School Ethics Commission has provided guidance in Public Advisory Opinion A03-98 regarding how a board should invoke the doctrine of necessity when a quorum of a Board of Education has conflicts of interest on a matter required to be voted upon. And whereas the opinion set forth that when it is necessary for a board to invoke the doctrine of necessity, the board should state publicly that it is doing so, the reason that such action is necessary, and the specific nature of the conflicts of interest. And whereas in keeping with the legislative purpose as set forth in NJSA 18A:12-22A, the School Ethics Commission views public disclosure of conflicts of interest to be paramount when the Ocean Township Board of Education finds it necessary to invoke the doctrine of necessity. Whereas a majority of members of the Board of Education have a conflict of interest in matters pertaining to the school ethics complaint filed by former board member Alex Hayes upon caption Hayes versus Gilman et sec, docket number C40-24. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ocean Township Board of Education does hereby invoke the doctrine of necessity for the reason of indemnifying / appointing legal counsel and that it must do so because of the conflicts of interest for board members Denise Parlamas, Irene Gilman, Amy McGovern, John McCarthy, and Jeffrey Weinstein, who have a conflict due to each of them being named in the complaint filed by former board member Alex Hayes. Be it further resolved that the Ocean Township Board of Education is herewith meeting their requirement, to read the resolution at a regularly scheduled public meeting. Will post it where it posts public notices for 30 days and will provide the School Ethics Commission with a copy of the resolution as required by the decision of the School Ethics Commission. Is there a motion?
I'll second it. I'll make a motion that we approve this resolution.
Okay, is there, you need a
Is there a
second? You need a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion about the contents?
I just have one quick question. I know that this is conflict of interest on all of us, but this doesn't have anything like, I believe Ms. Tortorello is on this complaint as well. I know she's not a sitting board member right now, but this doesn't mean that we can't legally defend her name as well, right?
Correct. So you have a separate resolution with respect to indemnification. I'll look into legality of indemnifying a former board member. That's a separate issue. This right here is to invoke it for the current sitting board member so that you can in fact vote to invoke this, so you can then vote on this separate resolution for indemnification.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Mrs. Tellerico.
I have a question. So there's 6 members with 5 sitting. That doesn't have any issue with a quorum being for meeting with the attorney?
For meeting, that's a separate issue than what's before you right now. That's an Open Public Meetings Act issue, and I don't know if, whether, or when 5 members will meet with their attorney, but I would say that the Open Public Meetings Act only prohibits 5 board members or more from meeting to discuss board business, not board litigation. That's a separate issue, but that's not really before you right now. So hypothetically, if the 5 of them had a meeting at the law office to discuss this case, I don't know whether it would be a violation or not. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but that's not before you right now. Nor is there any requirement that they all meet with their lawyer at the same time.
So you're saying that even though it's about board business, because that would be the indemnification would apply.
I'm saying your hypothetical is somewhat irrelevant right now because there's no legal requirement for all 5 clients to meet with their lawyer at the same time. So again, that's not an issue that's before you this evening, nor is it relevant to the resolution.
Well, I mean, just as a point of clarification, though, if they met with the attorney at 5 different times, it would cost the taxpayers a lot more money because it is $300 an hour.
One could argue the complaint is costing the taxpayers dollars because the statute applies and entitles board members to be eligible for indemnification.
So would
Board
you rather us
members-
meet together or separate? Because we haven't met together, nor have we
I'm not
done
speaking
anything.
To you, I'm speaking to Mr.
Right, and I'm asking,
Thank you.
we're in conversation.
Yeah,
I'm asking.
Ms. McGovern. yeah.
If I may, we could probably move on because that question, as I've mentioned I
Doesn't
think
matter.
3 times, really isn't relevant to the resolution. I would respectfully suggest you do a roll call, Madam President.
Okay. Mr. Hastings, can you please call the roll?
This is 9.6, the doctrine of necessity. Mr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. Dam,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman,
Yes.
Do we, excuse me,
Oh,
do we have to
ourselves?
recuse ourselves from ourselves?
Vote for you have to invoke it.
The doctrine.
Yeah,
Yes,
this is just for the.
Then yes for the doctrine.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Abstaining.
Mr. Weinstein.
Can you
Um,
abstain? You have
But
to have a
for-
reason?
Excuse me?
You have to have a reason to abstain?
You don't have to.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Parliament's
Yes,
motion carries.
okay. So now
So now.
we go back.
Yes, so now, yes, you want to call that 9.6. So this was 9.6. And then the next one is 9.6A, which is for the indemnification. I think a question, if I may preliminarily answer it. Question came up as whether board members should abstain from themselves. I would respectfully submit the answer is no, you don't have to in this instance. Generally speaking, let's say it's a New Jersey School Board Association conference and you're voting to approve the reimbursement for the hotel or the travel. You would normally abstain from your name, so to speak. In this instance, respectfully, because there are 5 sitting board members who are named in this complaint, arguably, even if you abstain from your name, you still have an interest in the other 4 members, which would therefore require you to abstain from them as well, which obviates the necessity in the first place. And so in order to take this action to provide you as board members, which you are legally entitled to under Title 18A and your board policy, my legal opinion is that you can vote on this resolution in order to invoke indemnification pursuant to statute is legally required action that can't be taken if you don't vote. So you may move on with the 9.6, which is the resolution to appoint David Rubin Esquire at the hourly rate of $300 per hour, which is a significantly discounted rate from his prevailing private sector rate based upon his skill and experience in this area. And further in accordance with policy 0148 and 18A, NJSA 18A:12-20, which again requires the board to indemnify board members for reasonable counsel fees in connection with any civil or administrative legal proceeding which arise from any act or omission arising out of and in the course of the performance of his or her duties. As a board member, be it further resolved that the Ocean Township Board of Ed hereby authorizes the board to indemnify again, Denise Parlamas, Irene Gilman, Amy McGovern, John McCarthy, Natalie Tortorello, and Jeffrey Weinstein in accordance with the terms of the letter of engagement set forth by their legal counsel, David B. Rubin, payable at the rate, again, $300 per hour. And be it further resolved that the superintendent, business administrator, or their designee are authorized to execute any documents and payments in furtherance of this resolution. Again, as indicated, it does reference a former board member, just as if there was a former employee of the district. 99.9% of the time legally, that those individuals are entitled to coverage indemnification for acts that arose during the course of their term or appointment with the school district.
Okay,
Is there a motion?
so I'm gonna make a motion to move ahead with 9.6.
Second.
Okay, yeah.
Or 9.6A.
Okay.
9.6A?
Yes.
Yes.
9.6A. Missed the end. Sorry about that.
Thank you. This is 9.6A, the indemnification. Mr. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. Dam,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Mrs. Parlamas.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we will now move on to the discussion items 9.7 through 9.11. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, Jeff, is there anything you want to kind of talk through on any of these things?
Yeah, so we've got a long-standing shared service agreement with Deal School for both maintenance services, field services, and lunch services. We're received an email from them asking to renew those services for the coming school year. So that is one item there on the agenda. We have a shared service agreement with Long Branch Schools for bus repairs. Again, that's been an ongoing relationship, and again, renewing it for the coming school year. And we have renewals of bids that were put out for OT/PT services through assistive technology services and nursing services. I would also like to point out the roofing project that we approved that was bid and opened earlier this week, I guess, maybe the end of last week. In the prior meetings, this is through a ROD grant, and the estimated cost of the project was approximately I'm sorry, turn to that page. It's approximately $4.6 million to do the roofing projects. That's the entire roof at Ocean Elementary and majority of the roof at Wayside. So that was $4.6 million that was estimated. The district is responsible for 60% of that through the ROD grant, which was about $2.77 million. With the bid total for both of those projects is $2.897 million, which reduces our out of pocket through the capital reserve account by $1.7 million, or creates 1.7, so it's reduced by about $1 million. So we've saved $1 million out of our capital reserve on this particular project to MTB Roofing, which is their name. That also then gives us a little more flexibility in terms of the lighting and doing the lighting through our capital reserve, so that we've, effectively created an additional savings of 1 million, which can be put towards that other project. So I think that's great news for us.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Anyone else have any questions?
Just,
Mr.
Mr.
Dalton.
Hastings, MTB, is that MTB that's on the NJSTA site on Steiner Avenue in Neptune City?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
VMG that you mentioned as well. We consulted our attorneys about their bid submission. The error that they made on their bid unfortunately was not curable. That was the legal advice we got. And again, VMG is their name. I believe they're in Roselle. Unfortunately, we couldn't move forward with them. We notified them in a letter of the error, and they accepted the reluctantly accepted the error and acknowledged that it was correct action by us. So we'll be moving forward, and the projects are scheduled to be completed over the summer.
May I just ask a question?
Ms.
Ms. Walden,
McGovern?
thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Williams. Ms. Walden, we approve, nurses and PTs and OTs throughout the year. I mean, for the year on a yearly basis. But for the most part, our PT and OT evaluations are normally done by our in-house staffed people, not our contracted people, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Taylor, for your help with that. Much appreciated. And thank you, Mr. Weinstein. We will now move on to instruction, education, and student activities. Ms. Gilman.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to approve 10.1 to 10.3. And then I'll read the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Anyone have any questions?
Comments?
I find the research project fascinating.
Ooh.
I hope to learn more about that.
I did too.
Because I think it's something that we all wonder about. So,
Absolutely. We have one of our staff members doing her doctoral dissertation, and she's in the study process where she's gathering data and information for her study. So that's what you see there, 10.3. The other items are our professional development items and our field trips as usual.
Anyone?
I think we should move 10.4, but then you can read
Say
it.
that again?
Move
It
to
should be
10.4 is
probably
also
both of them.
motion.
move them 10 through 10.4. And then if you'd like
So
to
it's-
read it after.
And then I'll read
10.1
that.
through 10.4.
Through 10 point, okay.
Okay.
Move to approve 10.1 through 10.4.
So
Second.
maybe what you'd like to, do you want to, you said you wanted to read it. Would you like to read it right now? Well, should
Yeah,
we,
you can read it right now.
yeah, you can, right now is the time to do it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Our resolution for Special Education Week. Whereas 237,000 children receive special education instruction in New Jersey, and whereas more than 15,000 special needs children are enrolled in preschool and early intervention programs in New Jersey, and whereas thousands of parents, teachers, child study team members, and school administrators give generously of their time and energy to support the learning needs of special education students, and whereas since 1985, New Jersey has proclaimed the second week in May each year as Special Education Week in New Jersey. And whereas the theme of Special Education Week 2024 is Diverse Learners, Big Dreams. And whereas the public school districts of New Jersey make a major contribution to the public welfare by preparing thousands of exceptional persons to participate as citizens of this state and as members of society, therefore be it resolved that the District Board of Education recognizes the students who have worked so hard and accomplished so much, and thanks their parents and educators who have provided support to these children and continue to look for ways to improve our schools to promote the achievement of all students.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Hastings.
This is for items 10.1 through 10.4. Mr. Dalton,
yes.
Mrs. Dam,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Mrs. Parlomas.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. Negotiations, do we have a report this evening? Ms.
Just
McGovern?
that we met and we continue to meet. Our next meeting is on May 30th.
Great, thank you. Is there any old business from the board? Is there any new business from the board? Ms. Gilman?
Last Tuesday was the last meeting of the New Jersey School Boards Association Monmouth County chapter. And at that meeting, our board member, Amy McGovern, was recognized for her 10 years of service. And I just think we should all congratulate her for that. So well done, Amy. Congratulations. Good job.
And I did send an email. I apologize that for some reason, New Jersey School Board emails are going to spam in my Gmail, in my school account. So I did do that, and I've added them as a person. So I did miss the email, so I apologize I wasn't there, but I am very thankful for them honoring me, and I'm thankful for Miss Gilman for being there in my absence. So
I
thank you
was
very
proud,
much.
proud to do it.
Did
Thank
you make a speech on our behalf?
No, but I took the certificate on.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Is that it?
That's it.
Ms. Gimlin? Okay, anyone else have any other new business? Okay, at this time, we will take any public comment from anyone in the room. Anyone? Ms. Hayes?
Where do I start? I have probably like 6 comments. So I'll just kind of go down my list, and I see you might be getting out your timer, but being that in previous meetings, other folks were allowed to read off their entire pages without being stopped at the 5-minute mark. So I would hope the same respect and equal treatment would be given to myself as well.
The chair has that discretion and she
Sure.
may or may not exercise it. So you have 5 minutes to speak, guided accordingly. Thank you.
Sure. The agenda from yesterday did not have the teachers on it. I understand every time there's a school board meeting at around 3 p.m., there's a new updated version. So thanks for clarifying that, Amy, but it was not on there yesterday. And thank you for clarifying, Mr. Dalton. The average person probably wouldn't know where to look for the contractors for school, but I appreciate your superintendent expertise in trying to solve that for me. So I appreciate that. Mr. Hastings, if you could maybe call me tomorrow in addition to some of the questions, the capital reserve being used for the stadium lights, I have some questions about, and the capital reserve, state law is extremely complicated and has all these different caveats and whatever. So I'd love if you can explain that a little bit better, how we're using capital reserve for the stadium lights, as one of the agenda items was. I was also wondering when, since we're in the business of educating public school students, when the next schedule for, when you are scheduled to go over the state performance reports that were released like about a month ago or so, when that will be brought up at a new board meeting. I also had a question, by tomorrow, districts must notify non-tenured staff if they will be keeping their jobs for the upcoming year by tomorrow. So I'm wondering how many non-tenured staff members are gonna get that notification tomorrow that they won't be here anymore. I hate to lose staff, and I would love to know what that number is. When I spoke, I don't know if I tipped anyone off, or I'm glad that Mr. Taylor is here about the doctrine of necessity, because when I spoke to Mr. Hastings about this, he had said that the school board attorney had said everyone could vote. So I'm glad to see you all properly invoke the doctrine of necessity, as I spoke to Mr. Hastings about. It would be awesome if all school board members acted according to state school board ethics. We might not be here where we are right now and spending money on attorneys. And I think that's it, except for how much time do I have left?
2:38,
Okay,
37.
so I do want to just bring up the resolution by the School Ethics Commission in connection with C-5623. I'm just going to read it in my 2 minutes that I have here. The School Ethics Commission found on February 27th, but there hasn't really been any update to this. But whereas at a special meeting on February 27th, the commission discussed finding that the facts and circumstances presented in the complaint of 5623 and written statement would lead a reasonable person to believe that respondent Ms. Gilman violated NJSA 18A 24B, NJSA 1812-24C, in counts 1, 2, and 10, NJA 18A 12.1D, NJA 12-24C, NJSA 24, I can't even read this, H, and I in count 4, and whereas at its special meeting on February 27th, the School Ethics Commission discussed finding that respondent Weinstein violated NJSA 18A 1224B and NJSA 1224C in counts 8 and 10, it's a mouthful, sorry. And whereas at the special meeting, they discussed transmitting the within matter to the Office of Administrative Law for a hearing to be held at a later date. Now therefore be resolved, yada, yada. So it would be interesting to know if the District A has any comment on it and if you have any court dates. If you have any actual dates on the docket, or if there's any update in terms of next appearances now that it'll be in front of a judge at the OAL.
Mayor,
So,
are you finished?
yeah, but I reserve an extra 30 seconds, I
Well,
suppose.
I'm not gonna reserve. Are you finished or not? If you're not finished, then continue.
I'm good. I'm gonna sit down.
So you're finished?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So as you know or should know, the board, upon the advice of counsel, cannot and will not comment on pending litigation. And as you know or should know, the ethics complaint that you just referenced is by and between individual members of the board, not the board as a whole. So there is no answer from this board to your questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the room that has any public comment? All right, Ms. Conway, is there anyone in the queue?
No, Madam President, there is not.
Thank you, Mrs. Conway. Okay, at this time I'd like to ask the board for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
May I please have a second? Second. Meeting is adjourned. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe.
Thank you.